Hi, I am the Tinkering Turtle, and today we're going to take my assembled Escape and we're actually going to do some pre-maintenance on it. What that means is we're going to adjust the brakes so there's no rubbing on both the front and the back. We're going to adjust the derailleur as needed to make sure that all the gears, the chains move to each gear in succession and there's no loud clicking. We're going to adjust all the components on the handlebars so they're slanted down a little bit and they fit my grip a little better. We're also going to check the tire pressure and make sure that's good for the ride, and I'm just generally going to go around the whole bike and make sure that all the bolts are tight and seated. I don't want to be losing a piece of the kickstand, for example. That would upset me, so I'm going to go through and make sure that all the bolts and screws are snugged up and make sure that we don't have any parts that are going to be loose or falling apart. So let's get to it. Okay, for my first step today, we're going to check for rubbing noises on the brakes. And there's no great way for me to attach my bike stand to get this up off the ground. So basically I'm just going to be leaning this over onto the kickstand to check the back and lifting the front by hand to check the front because it's the easiest way for me to go. So basically what I want to do for checking the brakes on the back is I want to grab this handle up here and then I want to lean the bike over towards me and I just want to spin the tire. I don't hear any rubbing, and if I grab the brakes it stops firm. Plus, when I grab the brakes, it comes down to a nice stop before it hits the handle, so there's no reason to adjust that. So the back brakes on this are good. Now for the front brakes, I'm going to come around here and grab the front here and lift it up, and I can hear that rub. So that means I'm going to have to adjust that front brake so that the rotor's in the center of the calipers. Now to figure out which way I need to move the caliper on the rotor, I'm going to use this light and I'm going to backlight the rotor so I can sight down it and see exactly which way the caliper has to move. So turn on the light. So you can see when I backlight it, the rotor has definitely got a very clear light path on the right, but on the left it's pushing against the caliper. So I need to move the caliper to my left a little bit. So I'm going to take my 5mm Allen wrench and loosen the mounts, top and bottom this time, until the caliper can move free. Then I'm going to squeeze the caliper and make sure that it moves freely on both sides. And the first thing I do is just attempt to fix it this way. I'm going to snug these up. I'm going to let go of the brakes and I'm going to check again. And I still have the problem. So now I'm going to loosen up the top and the bottom. I'm going to eyeball down, make sure I can see the light on both sides of the rotor. And then I'm going to snug up the top. I'm going to double check it. And then before I tighten it all the way down, I'm going to lift and spin the tire again and see if I can hear it. Oh, I can still hear it. Yep, finally adjusted it. Now it rotates freely, there's no sound. The brakes work really good. I'm going to go ahead and finish tightening up the two bolts, two 5mm Allen bolts, and I'm gonna double check it when I'm done. So now I got no rubbing. And that's adjusting the front brakes. These hydraulic brakes are really simple to adjust. You just need to center the rotor in the pads. And it takes a little fiddling. Sometimes you gotta loosen both and squeeze the brake and then tighten it up, and hopefully that'll do it. If not, you gotta loosen one or two bolts at a time and just adjust that caliper ever so slightly and tighten them back up until the rubbing's gone. But that's the front brake adjustment. Now we're gonna move on to the back ones. Now the back brakes, as I said before, weren't making a rubbing sound, but I am gonna double check them by visually looking as the tire spins. To do this, I'm gonna lean the bike up on the kickstand and spin the tire while looking down. And there's just a very, very slight rub. So I'm gonna loosen the top mount. I'm gonna ever so slightly move that top mount in. Now there's no sound. Now that I've got it centered up, snug up the two bolts, double check it. Perfect. Both brakes are checked. There's no rubbing sounds. They both work. I've checked them both, and we're good to go into the derailleur. Now this won't be a full derailleur adjustment video on how to do it. There are actually 3 adjustments that you can make on the derailleur. There's an upper limit, a bottom limit, and then an indexer. And today we're only going to look at the indexer to make sure that as I'm changing gears, the chain is going one step at a time and not making a lot of noise on each one. Now to check this, it's really simple on the cruiser and the step through to lean the bike over onto the kickstand and pedal while you're changing gears. Unfortunately, with the design of the Escape, the kickstand hits the pedal when you turn it, so you can't do this with the kickstand down. And that's a problem when you're doing this all by yourself, because now I've got to rig something up to lift the back tire off the ground without having the kickstand. So I'm gonna go grab my bike stand and see if I can maybe latch it on here to the rear rack and lift the bike up off the ground so that I can do this check. Okay, I've successfully got it up off the ground, and I put the kickstand back. Now you can see where the chain is, and I'm going to take this all the way up to first gear. So as you can see up front here, I've taken it all the way to first gear, but it's on second gear on the cassette here. So what I need to do is this adjustment right here is the indexer. So I want to turn this towards the direction I want the chain to go. I almost got it there. And now it's on the first gear. So now that I've got it on the first gear, I want to fine-tune this adjustment. And this is going to all be done by the sound of the chain. I want it to be quiet and smooth on each gear. So now I'm backing it down to pop into the second gear until I hear the best sound. See, I can hear it clicking now and just getting ready to jump to the next gear. So I'll turn it back. And that seems pretty quiet. So now I'm going to click it into second gear and see what happens. So that's a nice, smooth, quiet sound. Down to third gear. Fourth gear's quiet. Fifth gear. Sixth gear. Seventh gear. Oh, now that's interesting. In seventh gear, see if I can get a picture of this. Seventh gear, the chain actually hits the post here. I wonder what's causing that. It's hitting, the chain's actually touching this structure on the back of the bike. And I don't think there's any way for me to adjust that. So I'm gonna have to maybe contact Himiway and see what they say about that. Anyway, that's the short way to adjust the indexing to make sure that you're utilizing every gear up the cassette. You just simply rotate that in the direction that you want the derailleur to go until it clicks on every one of those. There is an upper and lower limit adjustment that maybe I'll do in a future video, but most of the time, I mean 99.9% of the time, when you get the bike, those are set properly, and you just have to adjust the indexer to get it to each one. Now, why the chain is rubbing on the frame, I'm not honestly sure, and it doesn't appear that there's any adjustment for that. So I'm going to have to contact Himiway and let them know that that's going on and see what they suggest. So let's move on to the next thing. Okay, on the back side of the kickstand, there's an adjustment screw that allows you to slide the bottom part of the foot up and down the stand, and there's a screw here. A lot of people have lost this screw and actually lost the bottom portion of the kickstand, so you want to double check and make sure that's tightened. You just take an M4 hex wrench and give it a couple turns and make sure that's good and tight. That way you don't lose the bottom of your kickstand. In addition to tightening up the bolt on the back of the lower portion of the kickstand, you're also going to want to check this bolt here and make sure the kickstand is firmly attached to the bike. And that's very tight, so that's good. You're going to want to go through and make sure these are tight. Double check the tightness of the stem bolts here and here. One on this side, one on this side. And just generally go around the entire bike and make sure you don't find any loose bolts or screws. So the next thing I want to do is I want to put a lube on the chain, and I chose the Finish Line dry bike lubricant. It goes on wet, but it's kind of like a wax, and it'll actually dry on the chain, and that'll keep the lubrication. And the link of this will be down in the description. You know, after some riding, I would typically degrease the cassette and the chain and then put it on, but since this is a brand new bike, I'm just going to go ahead and put it on right now while the bike's up off the ground. And to do that, I'm just going to take a shop towel or a rag, and I'm just going to squeeze a little bit on. And then I'm going to take and move the chain so I know where I'm at. And I'm going to do this until I get all the way around the chain. Now this isn't always the easiest to see, so you might want to put a little black mark on the chain so you can judge where you're at. It looks like that's it, and I just want to run it around a little bit. And I'm going to just kind of take off a little bit of the extra. Now that'll dry onto the chain and give me a nice seal from any dirt or debris getting down in and wearing out my chain. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the tire pressure in each tire. Now these tires are rated for 30 psi max. I never want to run at the max. That's just personally me. I know some people do, but you have a much better chance of the beads popping off if you're at max and you hit a good bump. So around here, I mostly ride on paved paths. So I usually keep my tires around 25 psi. Himiway I think recommends 20. It comes down to your personal preference. The fat tires will go clear down to I think 7 or something. So if you're riding on sand or something really soft, you may want to reduce the pressure to 7 to 10 pounds to get a better grip on things. Same goes for snow. Ice, you're pretty much on your own for that. But so I'm going to check my tire pressures and make sure they're both at 25 psi. And out of the box they come at about 15. 25. So now both the front and the back are set at 25 psi. The battery's charged. The only thing I need to do now is I'm going to loosen up the handles and get them turned down a little bit, because right now when you sit on it the handles seem high. I want them down a little bit, and probably adjust the gear shift down a little bit too, and the key display function. One more thing I wanted to show is the bell on the Escape is different than the Cruiser or the step through. The Cruiser step through, you pull it back and forth. That doesn't do anything on this one. It just adjusts the location of the handle. To make this ding, you pull it back and it's like a hammer. You let go. So that's an interesting, it's a separate ringer versus the one that was integrated into the handle for the Cruisers and the step throughs. Interesting side note. Anyway, I'm going to get some Allen wrenches and I'm going to adjust the position of the brake handles and the other components on the handlebars right now. So the brakes are a 4mm Allen screw. As I rotate it down, I'm hitting the throttle cable, so I need to rotate the throttle a little bit as well. I'm going to loosen this up. I'm going to rotate that down a bit. So I adjust that till it's tight. And I bring the brakes down and double check it. That's not bad. Now I'll repeat the same process on this side. And just keep adjusting that until you get a good feel. I think I want to bring this one down a little bit more. So now I've got the handles, the brake handles, the gear shift, the heads-up display, the LCD, the key display. My ringer is in the position kind of I want. The brake handles are at the right angle. Now everything's all set. So the only thing left to do here is to actually put the battery in and actually do just a quick check. I might want to adjust my pedal assist levels, and actually I might leave them at 0 to 5 for now, and then later on I usually take my other two bikes to 0 to 7 because I enjoy that more. But I want to see how this bike rides first, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that at 0 to 5. But it's ready for a test ride now. But this video is getting long enough, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video here now that you've got all the basic setup done. And I'll come back with another video showing a short test ride for me and my wife. And we'll go from there. So thanks for watching. If you like it, subscribe, share, whatever you want to do. And I will catch you next time.